Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open to be a part of the program. It is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
What a weird spring we're starting to enter into.
In a good way or bad way?
Oh, just the weather's all over the place. It was like snowing a couple of days ago, and then it was like 45 degrees out today, like, almost 10 degrees Celsius. Then it's going to fall back down. My poor chickens are confused. Very, very confused.
You know what you do? Just send your wife to cluck at them, and then they'll be distracted by the clucking, and they'll not pay attention to the weather.
I'm sure that'll prevent them from molting their winter weather gear.
Your questions entertained at 855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Steve, should we do some feedback?
What would you say if I said no?
Oh, we skip that part. We tell the listeners to go pound sand, and then you and I spend the rest of the hour talking about your audio problems, and I'll talk about Max. I mean, we got Linux stuff to talk about, Steve. We have, you know what? Between you and I think we have enough problems. We probably don't even need to. No, that's probably too far. We probably still need them.
Well, it is called the Ask Noah show, so it should be more than just me asking you questions.
Ah, that's true. Well, we'll let some people ask some questions. Not the feedback sounder, but we'll take it. Our first email comes in from David. David says, I've tried to set up my kids' Minecraft server to be available online by trying to set up my Sophos XG firewall. It seems that there's not many at Sophos who care about kid games. I don't have a huge budget, and I'd be open to a VPS, but I have no experience with them. I would try Cloudflare or Spectrum Pro, but again, no experience. I tried Pegolin.net. It's a free site and failed to figure it out. I tried one other service, but I can't even remember what it was. Tried turning on the proxy every time to play, and many times it shut down before we could log on to the game. David. So, Steve, if you woke up in David's shoes, what would you do?
I guess I don't have a very good definition of what the problem is, right? Like, is the issue that we can't punch holes through the Sophos firewall, or that people are not sure how to connect into his house, or is it that we don't want to open the firewall and we're trying to use, like, because he mentioned
the proxy,
Cloudflare and proxy, but usually you wouldn't proxy in, you would proxy out, and so I'm not quite sure what's happening here.
Yeah. So okay. So. You're right. More information here would be super helpful. So, David, if you want to write in and give us some clarification, it might help us land on a slightly better answer for you. Based on the information that I have sitting in front of me today, I have two approaches for David. So, the first approach might be the WireGuard approach. What would you think, Steve, if he were to put some sort of endpoint out there and then use WireGuard to traverse the Sophos to get onto the inside of his network, and or have the other people who want to play games just tell them, here's how to connect to my Tailscale or my WireGuard network?
So WireGuard would be, there's a little more of a barrier of entry there, just because you have to somehow exchange keys with the people that are remote. And if you don't own those and they're not... Well, let's say they're Windows machines and you're trying to walk somebody through remotely of how to set up WireGuard for Windows. Is that even a thing? I actually don't know the answer to that. That might be somewhat of a challenge. You could go with, so he mentioned Pangolin, and I'm not sure what failed there, but Pangolin is a similar idea. So is Tailscale, and Nebula is another similar type idea. any one of those that are doing a lift for you, like a Nebula or like a Tailscale, would probably be better for disparate operating systems, especially for trying to set something up for someone remotely, right? It's way easier to say, okay, Dad, install this thing, and then it will give you an authorization link, send that to me, right? He can do that. Generating keys and figuring out how to do it on the Windows side and then making sure everything all pairs up properly, that's a lot. It's not hard. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, but if your key demographic here are, let's say, teenagers that are more interested in making the game go than they are in technology, it might be a little bit of a lift.
So here's my other approach. And admittedly, this approach I might be bringing, an atom bomb where we're looking for a firecracker. So preface, you should be sitting down. Do you know what I would do, Steve, if I woke up and I had a Sophos XG firewall in my basement and I wanted to get my kid to play Minecraft or open that up to the world?
You'd put Linux on it?
I would, Steve. I would put Linux on my Sophos XG. So here's the dirty little secret that's not so secret about Sophos firewalls. They are just little Intel computers. And not only are they just little Intel computers, I don't mean like they're like Intel computers in that if you know what you're doing and you can, no, I mean like you can plug an HDMI cable into the back or VGA, depending on what generation you have. And you press F10, just like you would on like an Intel NUC or any of the Intel boards, and it will bring you to a bootloader, and you plug in OpenSense or pfSense or whatever you want to use, and you install it. A Sophos 210, an XG210, is the firewall that sits in my house. A Sophos XG210 is the backup firewall that sits in my house in case my primary one ever dies. A Sophos XG210 is the firewall that is sitting inside of our data center right now and running what we call the services router for all of our clients who need some manner of service, and it needs to be behind a VPN. And it runs pfSense, OpenSense flawlessly right out of the box. Advantages to this approach. One is, I promise you, if you're struggling to find people who care about kid games or want to give advice, that's the part that tells me he's trying to do a firewall hole or he's trying to find a way through, because he's apparently trying to get his Sophos XG to work, and he's saying that there aren't many people at Sophos that care about kid games. I promise you, there are a whole bunch of nerds that are running OpenSense and pfSense who very much care about Minecraft and Minetest and would love to help you or walk you through what it takes to punch a hole through all the rest of it. The second thing is, if you are listening to this and you take the second part of Noah's advice and you're like, okay, I'm willing to do that, and you put OpenSense or pfSense, and then you circle back and say, not really digging the whole punching a hole in my firewall. Well, guess what? The on-ramping that Steve just talked about just got a little bit easier by way of, now you're still going to have to do some exchanging, right? But you could send a WireGuard config, you could send an OpenVPN config, and the firewall itself will do all of the network and the routing and the hosting of the VPN itself. So it removes one barrier from you. Thirdly, it automatically will tie into dynamic DNS. And so if you are struggling with the concept of, well, my IP address changes, OpenSense, pfSense, they have tools built in that will automatically work with the domain registers. There's free ones that you can use if you don't mind having a non-white label domain after it. If you want your domain, you just need to use one of their supported domain provider, and there are many. I think Namecheap is pretty popular. What do you use, Steve?
Namecheap.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So the Namecheap is pretty popular and has a built-in client. So you literally just install the dynamic DNS client, you choose Namecheap from the thing, you copy and paste an API key in, and Bob's your uncle. Central office or home.mydomain.com will automatically update, and all that happens right on your firewall appliance. The other thing is, when, not if, you have additional questions on how to forward a port or change this thing or whatever, you can write to live@asknoahshow.com, and Steve and I would love to walk you through. But I'm going to go ahead and take a stab in the dark, Steve, that you have as much experience or maybe even a little less working on Sophos XG platform than I do.
I have not even set eyes on one.
Yeah. So neither one of us are going to be terribly helpful to you. There is just a port forward is I think what you're looking for if you're wanting to pull, make a thing through. I'll link for you in the show doc at podcast.asknoahshow.com, Sophos's documentation as to how they suggest you do it. And if you want to stick with Sophos, you certainly can, but I wouldn't do it that way. I would take the very capable piece of software, hardware that you have. If you're uncomfortable or you're worried about it, the other thing that I've done, every used Sophos I've ever bought, I've replaced the drive, because the one and only part I've ever had fail in one is the drive. And so if it makes you nervous at all, open the thing up, just take the screws out and pop the case off and pull the 2.5-inch drive out. If that makes you uncomfortable, just unplug it and double side tape a new drive on top of it and plug that in, and then install OpenSense pfSense on top of it. If you get partway down this rabbit hole and you're like, this is not for me, open the thing back up, unplug the new drive, and plug the old one back in, and you'll be back to the Sophos platform. But that's what I would do if I were you. If those answers are not acceptable to you, then just write back in, let us know what, give us a little bit more detail, and we'll circle back and try and give you some more answers. Our second email comes in from Dominic. Dominic writes in and says, "Hi, Noah and Steve. As a small addition to episode 477, I wanted to share an awesome GitHub gist that collects one-liners for static web servers, aside from Python, which I also found helpful." And then he gives the links. Best regards, Dominic. So, Steve, what is this collection of one-liners?
It's just a bunch of tools that are useful in a pinch, and perhaps are things that you might not have come across. So, for example, it took you a while to figure out the Python web server, for example. But that ended up coming in very handy for you. This has all kinds of stuff for how you do it with, say, Ruby or ADSF or Sinatra or Perl, you name it. And it's just a list of all the different types of things that you could do. NPM is in here, all that sort of stuff. So if you want a web server one-liner for, apparently even IIS is in here. I didn't even know people still use that, but it's just a way to open up, hey, BusyBox. I didn't even know you could do that. A BusyBox HTTP on, a specific port. So it's just a bunch of one-liners for if you needed to serve a directory like you were talking about.
I love that. Thank you very much for sharing this stuff. This is the kind of stuff that is the internet gold, right? There's some guy out there, some girl out there that looks at the stuff and says, hey, I'll just collect all of this stuff and put all this stuff together. And there will come a day when you will need this particular thing, and it will just be a nice little easy one-off tool that gets you there. How many times, in fact, I feel like we're going to talk about this later when we get to Linux Audio. How many times, Steve, have you ever gone out to solve problem A and you wind up spending all your time on problem B because problem B got in the way of you solving problem A?
It never happened.
Never happens. Doesn't that never happens? Scope creep isn't a thing. So, this is, to me, these little one-liners, these little things are the ability for you to take time to focus, continue to focus, keep the main thing. And then problem A stays problem A, and problem B can be offloaded to one-liners. Our third email comes in from Ted. Ted writes in and says, "First of all, I listen to your show weekly. We appreciate that. I also search the old episodes when I'm researching something. Thanks for all of the time and effort that you and Steve have put into the show. One of my plans for later this year is to replace all of the Cat 5e wires in my house with Cat 6. Should I be pulling Cat 6 or Cat 6a?" So, Steve, if you woke up and it was your house, what would you do?
I always pull the latest, unless it's hugely different in price. If you're in there, I don't want to ever go back in there if I don't have to.
So I have a little bit of a mixed bag on this one. In general, I would tell you the cable is not really what's going to cost you the money. It's the labor or your time's worth something. That's where it's going to That's where you're going to cost. That's where it's going to cost you. In this particular case, let me double check before I say, but I want to say there is a pretty significant price difference. So we'll look up vertical cable because I like vertical cable. So the cost of Cat 6, roll of a spool of 1,000 feet of Cat 6 is going to be $185. A spool of Cat 6A is going to cost $300. So it's 29 cents a foot. Versus, my mental math is just not this great. 185 divided by 1,000, so it'd be almost 19 cents a foot. So there's enough of a cost difference there that I would at least look at what you're getting for the money. The answer to that is the difference between Cat 6 and Cat 6A is 1 gig to 10 gigs. So with Cat 6, you're going to get 1 gigabit per second up to 100 meters. With Cat 6A, you're going to get 10 gigabits per second up to 100 meters. The question in my mind, it would be, if I were interested in 10 gig, would I go fiber? And I think the answer to that question is yes. So it breaks down in my mind, Stephen, if you can be a rubber duck for me and tell me if I'm onto something or if I'm overthinking the problem. If I need 10 gig, I'd rather pull fiber. And then the thing with fiber is we're not going to hit a limit anytime soon. So where the limit with fiber optic is converting photons to electrons and electrons back to photons. And that happens at the transceiver level. So you pull the fiber and then you put little SFP transceivers on each side. And when you want to go to a faster speed, you just pull the transceivers, put new transceivers on, plug the same fiber in, Bob's your uncle, you're back in business. So if I were looking at 10 gig, I think I would do that over fiber. Where would I not use fiber? Well, I wouldn't use fiber if I were going to endpoints. So things like wireless access points, things like SIP phones, things like TVs, those sorts of things. I would not, home automation stuff, I wouldn't put on fiber because then, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen many Raspberry Pis that have SFP adapters on them. So that's going to be a problem if it's an endpoint. But then I start thinking, if it's an endpoint, how often am I going to have an endpoint that needs to speak 10 gig? For crying out loud. I mean, what would I be pulling that would have 10 gig? And if I was going to have something that has 10 gig, I feel like I got a whole bunch more to think about by way of what am I putting in my core infrastructure that is going to allow that kind of throughput. So I very quickly get to, I would put 10 gig interlinks in between my switches. I might put a 10 gig link in between my main workstation. I definitely would consider putting 10 gig in my servers and my NAS and those sorts of things. I don't know if I'd put 10 gig to all of the endpoints. So from all of that, I suppose what you take away is if the extra 11-ish cents, 10-ish cents per foot isn't a big deal to you, pull 6A and call it a day. If you say to yourself, I don't ever foresee a time I am going to need 10 gig. And if I saw a time I was going to do 10 gig, then I would consider pulling fiber to those locations and putting a little switch with SFP. Or if it's going to like a workstation, just buying a PCI SFP card that you can plug in. How is my thinking on that? Am I missing something, Mr. Architect?
So the pulling fiber is kind of precarious because fiber can be broken fairly easily. So unless you're going to also run conduit and then open up walls, you have some pretty serious problems, right? Because you could have somebody like, if I think about my situation where it runs through the attic, somebody stepping on one of the cables accidentally or bumping it or whatever, there goes the run. And then you're going to have to re-pull it through. So if you haven't put it in conduit, you're in for a world of pain. Right? You might be able to get a drop in there, but try to reverse that again. And I'm sure they've got more tensile strength now than when I was working with them. But back when I was working with fiber, it didn't take very much to break them. So I would be very leery about running fiber in the walls if I didn't have conduit. And then if you're adding conduit, that's a lot. There's a significant expense.
Yes.
Conduit, opening the wall, and then actually buying the conduit and so on.
Yeah.
So
100%. So originally I was going to fight with you because I was thinking, because I've pulled lots of fiber and I've never had a problem with it breaking. However, where you got me is after it's run, does somebody drive a nail through it? Does somebody step on it? Does something get hooked on it? Does something, and that, yes, all day long and twice on Sunday, those kinds of things happen, right? Nobody's going to be careful with it. And so to your point, there's a video somewhere on the tubes of the Ubes that you can find in where a guy, they actually take, so there used to be a thing where you had a maximum bend radius, right? And if you bent it, it was a glass tube and it could break, right? And so the guy takes it and he bends the fiber around and like squeezes it until it's like, creased. And yeah, the light stops. And so the connection drops, but as soon as he lets go, it comes back. And I was very pleasantly surprised with how robust that fiber was and how well that fiber worked. And so I don't know. You're right. I think for the most part, if you're doing it right, you're probably putting it inside of conduit. And then there's another discussion to be had by way of, do you use plastic conduit, which is cheaper and you can easily do it yourself, or do you either have an electrician that knows how to properly bend pipe? Because as metal conduit, and it looks a little cleaner. I don't know. There'd be something there. I will leave you with this. If you decide to explore the fiber route, I cannot recommend OCC fiber enough. Highly, highly recommend OCC fiber. I've worked with them many times, and they are a wonderful company that that's the Optical Cable Corporation, I think is what they're called. And specifically, let me see if I can pull this up. The DX006 KSL X9YP. I'll put a link for you in the show notes. There are two. There is one that is essentially there's one that's used for where you need chemical resistance, and then there's one where you don't. Inside of a house, you're not going to need that. But it comes out to like 58 cents a foot. And so if you decide to go down the thing that I like about OCC is they will help you. So if you have questions, if you don't know what to buy, if you have questions on what the appropriate thing in your house is, they will help you. They will answer questions. And the people that answer the phone are incredibly smart nerds. So it's not just a sales, not even a salesperson, but like a customer service rep that doesn't know. It's people that have had experience putting in fiber or working with it, and that DZ cable, that it's an aluminum interlocked cable that is plenum rated, and so it will be much more tolerant to pulling around curves and getting caught on things and that sort of things. Not impervious, not perfect, but pretty darn resistant. And so I've used their 6 conductor, or their 6 pairs really is what it is. But, and love it. Love the company. Love every time I get to talk to them. True nerds, and they really want to help. So we'll have links for you in the show notes. It gives you something to go off of, and hopefully that helps.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of March 1st, 2026, here's the Linux and open source news. Firefox and Thunderbird 148 have been released. Postgres 18.3 is out. SciT 5.6 is now available. dbeaver 26 has been released. GNU Groff 124 is out. GNU Octave version 11 is also out. Shotcut 26.2 is available. And the DAW Ardor has released version 9.2. Calibre 9.4 is available. And Greg KH has announced that the 6.6, 6.12, and 6.18 kernels are getting their EOL dates pushed back by several years. The GNU Herd kernel now has a 64-bit version, and the Linux Foundation has announced the formation of the React Foundation. In distro news, Mabox Linux 26.02 has been announced, MX Linux 50.1 is now available, Omarchy 3.4 is out, The SSS, the smallest server suite, 51, has been released. AV Linux 25.1 is now out. Archbang 0103 is available for download. The Slackware-based Portix X has released version 2.6. Aaron OS 2026.02 is now available. Bunsen Labs Carbon has been announced, and the Tails team has released Tails version 7.5. In open source AI news, Alibaba claims its new open source Qwen 3.5 medium models offer Sonnet 4.5 performance on local computers. And Kali Linux introduces AI-driven penetration testing through Claude integration.
So Steve wanted to watch a movie. So he went down into his basement and he purchased a movie because Steve is against pirating. And he takes his brand new Blu-ray and he places it into his Linux freedom-loving computer and connects it into his custom-built home theater. And what happened, Steve?
The sound effects were so loud that I couldn't hear the audio tracks in parts. Like, just completely, it was almost as if they planned it to be whispering, but the scene was obviously not whispering, right? Mm-hmm. The scene all around it indicated that everybody should be talking at a normal audio. And I was watching with my oldest son, and I was getting questions like, what's happening? What'd he say? What's going on? I don't know. Just watch the movie.
So you walked out of that experience thinking to yourself, what? What was your plan?
So we have an NVIDIA Shield, and it has like night listening mode or something similar to that. I think that's what it's called. And it essentially adds compression so that it normalizes the sound of the explosions. Well, basically all the different frequency bands, it kind of normalizes it so that you're not blowing your eardrums out late at night when you turn up the sound to hear the audio track. So I thought this should be something I should be able to tackle. I was wrong.
So your approach was to compress the audio?
So my approach was go online and read a bunch of stuff because I don't know much about Linux and sound, right? I plugged sound in. I've definitely fiddled with sound drivers and that sort of stuff, but I am not a sound engineer. So I started off with, what's it called? It's called Easy Effects. I started off with Easy Effects because that's the one that everybody recommended as far as I could tell. And it gives you all of the bells and whistles in terms of like adding compression or multi-band compression or, you know, all of the different things. It had all of the things that I thought that I could want, essentially a glorified digital equalizer. Except that, it did exactly what it said on the tin. It was able to normalize the sound in the way that I wanted. I was able to set up the different bands based on the frequencies that I read about online. There are frequency bands for each type of noise profile that you might want to raise or lower or do something with, right? And I was able to do that, and it worked. So I was just, at this point, by myself after the movie, and I was just watching the most problematic sound places where the sound was problematic. And I noticed, most of the speakers are not producing sound. And in fact, normally when you hear, so the movie was Transformers, right? Age of Extinction. And so lots of bots moving around with the heavy thud, thud, thud every time they walk because they're huge machines. There was no thudding. And I went, I don't hear any noise coming out of my sub. So I played around for the entirety of Sunday, or was it Saturday? It doesn't matter. It was a weekend day. I thought I'd be able to get it working. And turns out that everything that I attempted outputted to stereo, not even 2.1 where the sub was used. I tried playing around with the actual configurations in, not Pulse Audio. It's the new one. Help me out here, Noah.
You're thinking of Pipewire.
Pipewire, thank you. I knew it started with a P. So I tried Easy Effects. I tried browser plugins. Now keep in mind, I know zip about this. So it was me like poking around on the internet, talking to AIs, all of the things. Like I was hitting this from every angle that I could think of. Actually reading like Stack Overflow type stuff of people who are doing this with or helping to understand how to work with Pipewire and fiddling with the configs. I couldn't figure it out. It looked like I had everything set up correctly, but everything would just output back to stereo. So I gave up, and I was like, you know what? This sounds like a job for Ask Noah. I'll ask Noah.
Okay, so the most meaningful, impactful thing that you said that caught my attention is that you don't have experience being a professional sound engineer. And so I have to ask if you're willing to share with me, what was the name of the movie that had such a poorly balanced soundtrack?
Like I said, it was Transformers, Age of Extinction.
When I hear that, the first thing that comes to my mind is that that's a big enough movie that somebody already did this work to sit down and tune all of the things, so you shouldn't be having this problem to begin with. In theory, nobody else, operating system notwithstanding, most people don't even have a computer that they're playing their Blu-ray through, right? Most people just plug it in, they just take the optical disc and stick it into a Blu-ray player and they hit play and audio comes out. And so I think we have another problem going on. One thing that we could do is we could tune your receiver. So on most on all receivers, there are settings. On many receivers, particularly the brand name ones, if you told me it was like an Insignia, those sorts of things, maybe it would just be, a menu thing that you'd have to go through. But a lot of the brand name ones have built-in room tuning. So you can set the speaker size for things like, is it a large room? Is it a small room? Are the speakers large cabinets? Are they mid cabinets? Are they small cabinets? Do you have a sub? Do you not have a sub? Is it set up for 7.1, 5.1, those sorts of things? Have you looked into any of those things, or would that be an approachable path to see if we can fix the core problem first of you should just be able to buy a produced movie, stick it in your player, Linux or otherwise, and it should just come out and just work?
So I definitely be open to that. The additional thing that I was hoping to come away with is a repeatable pattern that I could apply to. So we have a projector in a different room that we use for like schoolwork. So it doesn't even have a receiver. It's just got the regular like Logitech 2.1 surround sound, because that's perfectly acceptable. Mm-hmm. But I thought I would try and apply whatever I learned doing this in the theater room into the other projector room. And so I absolutely, if I could only, if the takeaway from our talk is really the best way to do this is on the receiver, you'll get the best results. I'd be fine with just saying, you know what, when there's a movie where we feel like it's unbalanced, or, for the best viewing experience, go to the theater, right? I would be fine with that. But ideally, I would be coming up with a way that it would work for both of the projector setups.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The other ones, are they, they're 2.1, right?
Yeah.
Or just 2 maybe not even a sub.
They've got a sub.
They do have a sub. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So here's what I would tell you. I would tell you that I'll give you best case. I'll give you like best option, good option, okay option. Best option is we fix each one of these places. So in the places that have 2.1, we tune them for 2.1. In the place that has 7.1, we tune it for 7.1. And we get all the things set up so that you can take any produced video that has already had a sound engineer do all the tweaking and getting all the things exactly the way that they want you to, and play it. And here's why that's the best way to do it, is because the problem that you will face doing any other option is that part of what makes surround sound is the fact that there is a high dynamic range. The fact that when the big explosion comes, it does startle you a little bit and you're like, oh my gosh, and but you can still hear the soft passages of the conversation. That what we call high dynamic range is part of the cinematic experience, so to speak. So if we can preserve that, we want to. So that would be best case scenario. Next on the list is good. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that we decide We don't want to do that, either by way of, I'm not looking to build a cinema in my basement. I just want the kids to be able to hear the lines. And frankly, I don't want to hear them on the third floor. Part of the problem with us talking about stuff before the show and then in the show is I struggle to keep the stuff straight. And then I can't remember if you've already told me during the episode, or if you haven't. Did we talk about the fact that you're trying to get isolation away when you're 3 floors up?
No. So one of the other things, because of this problem that we're talking about, now it's not on all shows and it's not on all movies. And that's why I couldn't isolate it to a specific thing. But when we have either one of our parents come to visit, both sets of parents enjoy sitting in the actual theater room with the surround sound, the couches down there. It's just more comfortable, right? The problem is that because there's this issue where the audio track, specifically the voice track, is often low, they have to turn it way up, which means that when there is loud noises, like a startling noise or whatever, we hear it 3 floors up. Like when I'm talking in the basement, this is the concrete foundation basement, and we are, on the top floor of a backsplit, and we can hear that all the way up here, despite all of the things that I have done in that room to dampen the noise already. Like a bunch of the walls have either sound dampening or soundproofing in them and all that sort of stuff. But it has to be turned up loud enough, especially both sets of parents are getting on in years. And so their ability to hear the high frequency sounds is less. So they turn it up like when I go to watch a movie with them, it's already loud for my level of hearing at the audio voice, like at that high, the high frequency that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So they turn it up higher than usual. But then, like I said, the booming can actually wake the kids up who sleep on the floor above them, like not directly above, but
mm-hmm.
on the floor above the projector room. And so ideally we fix this so that we can normalize that a little bit.
Okay, so once we get to that point, then it's no longer about we're trying to preserve the cinematic experience. Then what we're really looking to do is get to a point where we tweak the cinematic experience to meet specific needs. So the problem that you were running into where it's converting everything to 2-channel, that's because, the vast majority of tools are designed for people that are using 2 channels. The other thing that not complicates this, but just that we need to take into consideration is we need it to be real time, right? So this would not necessarily be a problem if you were willing to take the movie and you could open the audio tracks in like Audacity and you'd see all 7 of them and you could highlight each track and you could use a compressor tool and you could normalize or compress. But I'm going to guess you're going to tell me, every time I have a movie, I don't want to pull it into a software and then tweak the audio and then re-upload the thing. And then I got 2, I've got the original, plus I got this other one. And then I've got, an hour worth of work before I can just enjoy my movie. I just want it to work on the fly. I'm guessing that's your expectation.
Yeah. Yep.
So when we look at live processing, there's a number of different tools that you can use. Our doer can do this. And if you told me that you were doing live music, might be, actually, not even if live music, if you told me that you wanted to make lots of settings on the fly, I would tell you to check that out. But based on what you've told me so far, what I would suggest you look at is Carla. So what Carla is a live, it is a live modular audio plugin host for Linux that supports a bunch of different audio drivers, a bunch of different plugin formats to include LADSPA, DSSI, LV2, VST2, VST3, AU. If there's a plugin available, chances are it probably works with Carla. And then the second part of the equation that you're going to need is a compressor. And so I'm a big fan of X42, x42plugins.com. And you can download a Linux native compressor that will work great. So here's how you'll put all the pieces together. You would install Carla, and basically the way to think about Carla, Steve, is it's like a live audio patch bay. So you can take different plugins and you can route audio into Carla, and then you can say, I want this channel. So you'll bring all 7 channels in, 7.1 channels, you bring the sub channel into. Bring all 7.1 channels in, and you then assign each one to a, you'll assign each channel to a compressor inside of Carla. Then you can tweak to your heart's content. You can say, I want to compress this guy, and I want I want the dialogue, the center channel to all be, just smashed, just compressed to the max, so that, everything, even the whispers, are super audible, all that. And then I want to take all the rest of this, and I want, the sound effects, maybe I want those to be mostly as is, because I want them to be there. But maybe I want them a little softer, and you'll be able to do all of that in real time with Carla. The best thing about that is when you pull the Blu-ray out and you put a different one in, audio is always going to go to Carla, and the same settings that you used for one movie will be able to use for another movie. Don't like it or have a different style movie, maybe you can save different presets in Carla. So you can have one for action, and you could have one for documentaries, or you could have one for just shut this off and just do all the pass-through stuff. And it'll allow you to do all of those things. The other thing that Carla does is it has what they call the virtual patch bay, which is just a cool thing to play with, even if you don't have any interest in Linux audio, insofar as Pipewire exposes every input and output to a various different, what's the word? Where you can represent it as a little graphical thing. So there is a piece of software called, what is this thing called? QPW Graph. And QPW Graph is a Pipewire Qt GUI. And so basically you can drag, if you have 7 channels of audio, you'll see 7 channels pop up in there. And if you have 2-channel speaker system, you'll see the 2 channels that show up there on your speaker system. Carla is kind of like QPW Graph on steroids insofar as you can virtually patch any channel to anything, and so you could run it through a bunch of things. So maybe you'll have one channel and it'll run into a compressor, and then you want to run it into a normalizer, and maybe you want to run it through a de-esser, and then maybe you want to run it through an equalizer, and then you want to send it out to your 7.1 your amplifier. You can do all of that. You can stack as many things in the virtual rack as you want to. So if you told me you wanted to get, and the other thing I like about Carla, and why I'd recommend it for you, Steve, over something like Ardour, it's just simpler. It's designed to be a standalone appliance. Like, I am going to do something in a live environment. I want to process audio real time, so I don't, because that's the other thing too, right? You can get yourself into a bit of a world of hurt if you start running things through too much processing, and then all of a sudden it loses sync with the words. And so then the characters, their mouth is moving and it's not matching. I mean, that would drive, I don't know about you, that would drive me nuts. And so Carla is designed for real time. It's designed to do all this stuff in real time. And maybe the only tweak you'd have to make to your system, and this is a maybe, I don't do this, and I do stuff live all the time that's very time sensitive and don't have a problem, but there is a real time Linux audio kernel that you can use if you need to get it even tighter. But I will tell you, when drums are a great example of this, right? If I'm in a groove, if I'm finding the pocket and I'm trying to play a beat, and if the virtual instrument is not responding at the absolute millisecond that I'm hitting the pad with my drumstick, I'm going to notice, and it's going to be super obvious, and it's going to be super distracting. So to find that pocket and to get in the groove, it's got to be real time. And I don't use the real time audio kernel, and I haven't had a problem. I know that I understand anyway that it comes with Ubuntu Studio by default. I've tried it. I do like some of the out of the box configuration in a music environment, but I also like knowing how to reproduce all those things myself, and I feel like it does too much of it for me. So I kind of stick to Arch, but that is what I would do, Steve. If you wanted to tweak your audio problem in real time, I would install Carla. I would install an X42 compressor, and actually X42, it's x42-plugins.com. They actually have a bunch. So you could start with a compressor, which will get you what you want, but they also have like a peak limiter, so it'll get to a point where it won't let it get too loud. There's auto tune. You want to have a fun time with your kids, go put a microphone to your computer and turn auto tune on and let them sing into it. Yeah, that's what I would do, and see how far that gets you.
This looks like I need to go back to school.
You know what? Here's what I would tell you. It is easier than it looks from the screenshots. It is really just a function of you install Carla, which will be in the AUR. X42 plugin. I mean, I'll double check, but I'll bet you dollars to donuts X42 is in the in the AUR as well. So that's 2 yay commands away from, X42 plugins is there. So it's two yay commands away or Pac-Man commands away, and you'll have your needed software. And once you run Carla, there's not much to it. It's add a plugin, and so you'll add a compressor, and in your case, you're going to add 8 of them, 7 and then 1 for the sub, and then you'll bring your 8 channels in, or your 7.1 channels in, and you'll assign each one to a compressor, and then you just tweak your settings to your heart's content. And you might find that the default settings on the compressor solve your problem right out of the box, and you need not do any more work. But to the extent that you want to, really what you're going to change is the ratio. You're going to change the ratio of the compression, and I would probably start with like 4-to-1, 5-to-1, and then I would increase it as you decide that you want it to be more squashed, more equal, if that makes sense.
Yep, there's gonna be a lot to learn just in terms of like what plugins might be useful and what are they called and how do they work and like all that sort of stuff. So there wasn't an easy button like I was hoping for.
An easy button. Yeah, I guess short of, well, here's the other thing. So we'll throw this out there. If there's somebody in the audience that says to themselves, I've solved this problem, I did this, and the way I did this is with X, I'm approaching this from a sound engineer's style standpoint, right? Where we are going to re-engineer the audio tracks in real time to Steve's liking. But there may be a pre-built tool that does exactly this for movies, and I just don't know about it. That is absolutely possible. So maybe that's the case. We throw that back to the audience and say, would you help a brother out? He just wants to watch movies in his basement and not disturb the kids upstairs. Is that too much to ask?
This looks like it'll fit the bill. It just is more like with the NVIDIA Shield, it was like click, night setting on, right? Done. And that was the end of it.
Oh, Steve, light bulb. You ever seen Despicable Me?
Yes.
And that line means something to you. So here's my thought. Yes, it exists! Real-time problem solving for the win. Hey, Steve, how would you feel about just using Kodi to watch your movies? Because guess what? Kodi has a plugin for normalizing audio.
Oh, interesting. So
Scripts
I could try that because we already plug. Kodi is the front end that we use on the NVIDIA Shields to access Jellyfin, because honestly, I'm sorry, this is going to be disparaging, but the Android TV Jellyfin app is kind of trash. It does bad things. So at least for us. So we've actually reverted to using Kodi as a front end for Jellyfin as the primary player anyway. So I could go that way.
So there's a built-in functionality called maintain original volume on downmix that can be enabled from the audio settings. And then additionally, there are plugins for Kodi that do exactly what you're talking about, nighttime audio normalization for nighttime listening. And to normalize audio within consistently watching a TV show and playing audio subtitle settings, set audio to around -20 dB and set audio amplification to around +dB. You can feel free to adjust the volumes for your precise control. So I'll put the internet answer in the show notes as well. And maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I'm over engineering it. And the answer here is just to resort to using the built-in functionality that good old Kodi provides. And I got to tell you, I understand what you're getting at by way of Jellyfin and having things like, it keeps track of where you left off and what shows and who's watching what and those sorts of things. But my goodness, do I dig Kodi as far as just a drop dead simple works every time I open it up to watch things. And, I would say once out of every 6 months, or maybe that's even exaggerating, I have to restart Kodi. It'll be some weird thing like audio will stop it'll play silently or something like that. And all I do is close out of the Kodi app and reopen it, and it's back to normal. And I believe that to be more of an issue with the NVIDIA Shield and the idiotic, stupid feature in which it takes me out of the application I left it in and back to the stupid advertisement filled home screen with apps I don't want to see, with advertisements I didn't care about, with I don't. So there's that, but then the answer to that is the Vero, right? The Vero 5K or the Vero 5, Vero V, whatever they call it now. A custom built Kodi appliance. So try the Kodi route, maybe start there. And then if that doesn't work, then we can get into sound engineering. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, I think I like that plan. Lots of love.
Sorry. Continue.
No, I was just saying here, there's a lot of love for Kodi. So,
and the other part of it is it keeps it consistent for your family, right? Then it's one consistent interface across all of the home machines. It checks your box of, doesn't matter if it's the upstairs 2-channel protector, downstairs home theater, doesn't matter any of that stuff. It all fits the same bill and just works.
Absolutely.
And then we're offloading that to a thing designed for it. All right, I wanted to give a brief update with access control. So we talked about this a few weeks ago, and I told you that I was ordering a Chinesium access controller. Well, it showed up, and oh my goodness, am I in love. In fact, I would go as far as to say I haven't had a device that has brought me this much joy in a long, long time. So in case you missed it, a brief recap is I ordered an $18 physical access control board. It is made by a company called TM Dallas, and it is stupid simple to set up. Essentially, you give it 12 volts, however it is you want to give it 12 volts, and then it has a standard input for a standard Wiegand reader, which is the standard across all physical access control. It has all of the standard outputs that you would expect by way of a relay to control an external power supply, or to control a magnet lock, or to control an electric strike, or an electrified handle set. Any sort of lock that exists, you're able to control with this little control board. And it even has some features in it that even the big boys you're paying extra for or need to get out, you need to add on. So what does it lag? Where are you giving up? Where are you giving in as a compromise? Well, one, it takes 1,000 users. So if you need more than 1,000 users, this is not the right choice for you. But then again, it's an $18 board. What'd you expect? The second part of this is if you need to remove one of the keys, you have to either have that credential available or you have to wipe them all and start over. So in small environments like a house, no big deal, right? You're probably going to have it. And if you lost the thing, it's not really the end of the world to wipe it and re-enroll it. You got a business and you got 20, 30 people telling them all, hey, I'm going to need your key fob because John left his at the bar last night and now we don't know where it is. And I got to, that could get to be kind of a pain in the patoot. So know that there are some limitations, but the thing that I was looking for and the bar that was going to make it a success for me that it absolutely hit was it does everything in a standard fashion. So it doesn't, you can wire your room or you can wire your door just like you ordinarily would with the big boys. And you're able to then leverage this tiny little $18 board to do everything that you need it to do. The only thing that the only thing that was kind of a disappointment, I also just for funsies ordered a little cheap Chinesium reader for $16. I'd go ahead and stay away from that one. To save you a lot of in-depth nerd RFID knowledge that you probably don't care about, it uses the EM4100 standard, which is not very popular, and stays away from the H10301 standard, which is in use by practically every proximity system out there. So I would spend the extra, $15, $20 to get a used HID reader on eBay, or I'd just buy a brand new one for $100. Coming up this weekend, it is the Southern California Linux Expo. It's Scale 23X. Now, I'm not going to be able to be there this year, but we teamed up with Scale to offer you a promo code anyway. It'll be ANS. It's live for 40% off tickets. Please share it far and wide. The cool thing about Scale, in addition to it being one of the absolute largest community events that brings in the big dogs is the co-located event. So there is Planet Nix. There is Capture the Flag. There is Fedora Hatch Day. There is the Incident Response Competition. There is the Game Night. There's Birds of a Feather Session. All of these other little mini fests inside of one gigantic fest, spread out over 2 buildings in beautiful Pasadena, California. It's something you're definitely not going to want to miss. You can learn more by going to SoCalLinuxExpo.org. It starts March 5th, runs through March 8th. The Pasadena Convention Center. Join them for 4 days of sessions, for workshops, for community activities focused on open source, security, DevOps, and cloud native, and more. Again, code ANS for Ask Noah Show. Use that to get 40% off your tickets. Share far and wide. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. I thank you for joining us. We record the show live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central at AskNoahShow.com. You can go to podcast.AskNoahShow.com. There you'll find not only the articles and references we use to create the show, but all the things